Hello and welcome to session 1 of 5 for Godbound. Godbound is an OSR-inspired game of sort of new divine heroes. And I'll go through exactly what that means in a second. My name is Lowell, pronouns he, him, and this session is part of the Gauntlet Hangouts. The Gauntlet is an online gaming club / community, and you can find out more about that and what we do at gauntlet-rpg.com. But today we are playing Godbound. It's by Kevin Crawford. Kevin Crawford's written a number of other OSR-inspired games that all share some basic system things, and they all have a lot of really wonderful random tables in them, which is enjoyable. I've run Godbound a few times before, and I dig it. So I'm excited to be trying this out. So let me go through CATS, the sort of steps to go over what exactly we're doing today, what we're playing, starting with concept. So a concept is we have a world here where the gods have been shattered, destroyed, forgotten. There was a war. Humans went up to the throne of heaven, found it empty. There were sorcerers making new gods, all of that kind of stuff crashed the world, and we take up some time down the road. There are probably some broken gods and things out there. Some people don't believe that they existed. Some people do. It's a crazy kind of fallen world. We have heroic characters who are gaining the sort of lost powers of the gods. They come in the form of words, which define certain areas of influence. And for some reason, our mortals are gaining these special abilities, and they will grow in those abilities over time. At the start of the game, they're pretty potent, but your ability to sort of flex and influence the world might be a little lower. As time goes on, you'll gain, in addition to your words, you'll gain the ability to kind of shape dynasties, shape the path of things, change how things work for the better in different areas. This is a game about heroes on a path of kind of conflict and greatness. Our approach is that this is a pretty flexible fantasy game. I'll put some options out. I'll put some inciting incidents out on the table. I have some names. I have some places. The Godbound book itself does have some setting materials, but we're going to play this a little more collaboratively as we go through today to allow us to kind of define where we're from, what the world is like, and so on, and we'll play out from there. You will have a substantial toolbox to play with, a substantial number of abilities to bring to bear to solve problems. As I mentioned before I started recording, you have these gifts, which are the abilities, these special powers that come from within the words. You've got a certain amount of points to spend on those. You can choose your gifts at the start, or in play, you can say, oh, I think I have this one, and spend the 6 points that you have on words as we go along. It's up to you how you want to do that. Tone-wise, this is a high fantasy world, a lot of bad stuff going on in it, evil bleeding in, sinister cults, dangerous old sorcerers, weapons, all of those things in the background. But our characters are heroes. You are characters that, at the very least, are acting in a positive way, essentially not intending destruction. Maybe a little bit of self-interest, but we're going for the good to neutral good approach for tone here, and we can figure out in play exactly what that means. With all of those things in mind, the last thing to talk about is safety. And we use a set of safety tools together to handle our game. At the start, our most basic safety tool is lines and veils. Lines being material that we don't want to see. that we absolutely don't want to deal with in the game, topics, materials, things like that. We've got all of these lines and veils on a tab on the character keeper. So for example, just at this point, we have lines on dental horror, mind control, PC betrayal, sexual assault, and torture. Those are things that we're not going to be exploring in play. And then we have some things that are veils, materials that, should they come up, will fade to black, will fade away from them. And at least at this point, that's for sexual content and rioting are the two things that are on the table. We'll have a chance to add on to those as we need to, increase the span or realize there's some things that we've left off in the course of this. So that's the first layer. To support that, the second layer is the X card. X card used to mark if we hit material that you find objectionable, that you find problematic, that you think is wildly off tone. I know all of you are familiar with the concept of the X card. In play, you can verbalize, I want to X card that. You can do this as a safety gesture. You can do it in the chat as well. We will stop, find the point that we need to go back to, and roll forward from there. Won't ask for justification or questions, except to kind of clarify where we need to cut. That's the second tool that we have to support that. The last one is, this is sort of open door policy. So if we do hit materials or ideas or concepts that you're just not comfortable with, this has happened where we've hit somebody's phobia and they weren't quite prepared for that, and they're welcome to walk away from the table. We don't ask questions, justification. They can do that. So that's what the open door policy means in this case. So with all of that in mind, are there any questions about the safety tools? Anything that anyone would like me to clarify on that?
Yes. I was hoping if someone could, I'm not sure who it is, just marked harm to animals. I was wondering if you could sort of explain what specifically, or explain that just like a little bit more, just because my word involves animals and using animals in combat. So I don't want to create problems for you. And I myself am an animal lover, so totally get it.
Yeah, I marked that one.
Sure.
Also an animal lover. Generally, I'm okay with it. I just don't like sort of prolonged scenes of gratuitous violence towards animals. If the animals can stand up for themselves, that feels pretty good.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. We'll keep that in mind for descriptions. And if we do hit anything that anyone's uncomfortable at any point, just say, and we'll figure how we dial back from that. Yeah, that's a real common question, especially with the words that are happening there. We'll adjust as we need to. Other questions or statements? Okay, so we're going to move to the character creation process. I want to just quickly, for anybody who might be watching this video, go through what that is. Some of the players have started to do this. This is a random generation character creation with the standard D&D strength, wisdom, con, etc. stats. This game has roll 46, take the 3 highest, and assign that value as you choose. Do that 6 times. Or you can also just assign a set of rolls that they have 16, 14, 13, 13, 10, and 8. Those generate a modifier. That's the big thing. Then there's picking the 3 words that define your character's domains, and then figuring out most of the calculated stats and armor and things like that. So let me go, and what I might do is might start with one of you, have you tell me about your character, ask some leading questions, talk about what you think they look like, that kind of thing, just to kind of do the introductions and get that across. We'll do that first before we come back and I'll ask you about the facts for your character, the things that define your background. But let's get a general introduction. I think that Will, you are here in this first column, which is the most dangerous column, because I always call on that person first. Will, tell me about your character, what their name is, pronouns, and the words that you've chosen.
Okay, well, I'm still kind of figuring it out, but
sure.
My character is called Sathiri. Their pronouns are they, them, and their words are endurance, bow, and journeying. So I guess endurance is just like being really tough. Don't need to eat or sleep or drink or breathe. Bow is just being really good with a bow, and journeying is kind of being able to, travel with supernatural abilities. So what I was thinking with my character is that they're kind of like a protector of like a nomadic people, and yeah, maybe like a kind of Mongolian style steppe nomads, and yeah, I guess kind of well used to being exposed to harsh elements and traveling long distances. And they're not really like a god in the sense of, like a god of the sea who represents the sea. They're more like the epitome or archetype of a warrior of this culture.
So I imagine then you have your home settlements, and with the journeying power, you're able to go out and meet and work with other people to do things to generally help. How old do you think that Sathiri? How old do they look?
I reckon they're like maybe 30 years old.
Okay. And within their sort of their people, are they seen as just kind of strangely strong, or are they recognized as being, holding some kind of divine spark? How do you think they're perceived there?
I think they're not yet perceived as being a deity. They're perceived as like, just like someone who is like at the epitome of the skills that are considered best in this culture.
Do you think that well, let me ask you this: do you have siblings? Do you have brothers, sisters, or are you the only child?
Good question. No, I think I have like a couple of brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. And do you think they share something of these gifts, or are you an anomaly in the family?
No, I'm the anomaly in the family.
Okay. So
I don't know if there's any like kind of law. I've only got a very brief overview of this Godbound world, but I'm assuming that it's a bit flexible.
Yeah. Is because the gods have been gone in different beliefs in different places. Do you think that people have your people have a sense of what it means to have gods, or has that been forgotten?
I think they actually have a legend that a long time ago they had a god, and they were like a sedentary people, and they lived in one place, and then when their god died, they were driven out of their homeland, and since then they've been wandering.
And of the three words that you have, which do you think manifested first for you?
Probably endurance.
And what was what happened?
I think maybe when I was like almost like a baby. Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's say when I was like a teenager.
Okay.
And there was like some sort of like blizzard or weather that that I wouldn't have survived unless I had this endurance.
You were caught out in the middle of the blizzard. You know, no one could have survived it, but somehow you made it home. Does Cytherea picture themselves as like magical or divine or something stronger, or is it just do they just have a sense of this being a strangeness, as you say, just being great at what they do?
No, I think Cytherea understands on some level that they have a divine spark and a divine calling, but they can't really articulate that to their people yet, to their family.
Excellent. Okay, I like that very much. Have you chosen any of your gifts? Are there any gifts that you're like, I definitely want to have this one?
Yeah, I definitely want to have the endurance one, where it's like kind of like you pick one thing to be immune to, and it's like on a per scene basis. So it's like I think one of the examples is like if you're fighting a dragon, you can be like, until the end of the scene, I'm going to be immune to dragon fire.
Yeah, that's
so
a good one.
It has to be fairly specific.
Absolutely. Okay. And we'll come back once we get everybody introduced, and then I'll ask you about some of those facts. Maybe if you have one or two of them defined. And again, the facts being a sort of an aspect that you state out, and you get a bonus when you make rolls related to that particular thing. Dan, should I go with you next, or should I move on and swing back with you at the end?
I'm happy to jump in now.
Okay, yeah. Dan, tell us your character's name, pronouns, and a sense of who they are.
I'm pronouncing this Lithian, and she goes by she, her. She has alacrity, cities, and artifice as her words. I liked kind of how all those things fit together. It felt almost sort of like someone who could do parkour really well. And so those are the two kind of initial concepts. I'm imagining her as a street urchin in one of these fallen cities, who just imagined that her, just by growing up, her abilities were getting better. What she did not realize is that she was sort of touched by these godlike words, these words, capital W. And she ended up, sort of typical story, thieving for a living. And she fell in with like a clockmaker type person, and started to learn all about machinery. And that's where artifice kind of emerged, where, again, her so-called mentor here, who was actually having her pull a lot of stealing jobs, was teaching her, but he realized that she far surpassed him in his ability to construct machines and clockwork.
And how old does Lithian present? How old does she look?
Oh, interesting. I think she's now, she's been doing this for a while. I don't know, the way you asked that question made me think that maybe she's been doing this for a while, but because she's been touched, that she sort of still presents kind of early 20s.
Okay. And what is her moral compass? Like what? She's a thief to survive. I assume not more that. And now she's kind of leaned into like learning how to make things. What is her moral backbone that shapes her?
I think she stole to survive, and that created a kind of sense of social justice in her, where she got to a point where when her mentor was asking her to thieve, even from some merchants who were hardworking but not nobles, she refused to do that, and that she really thought very highly of people who worked hard or were despondent because of circumstances beyond their control. And so I'm not going to say she cultivated a Robin Hood style moral compass, but she really came to understand right from wrong in terms of kind of the overall emergent class system.
What's her relationship right now with her mentor?
It's complicated, I think. The kids in some ways, she owes a lot to him. In some ways, she realizes that she's outgrown him. And in some ways, she realizes that he doesn't have the same sense of, same moral compass that she does. And so she feels conflicted about the kinds of things that he may be asking her to do or that he needs. But maybe she's also seeing him become more frail, more unable to care for himself. So she feels like she has this obligation to take care of him.
Is the city your friend, or is it something to be overcome and managed?
She definitely feels like she and the city are essentially one. That there's almost no boundary between her and the city. And
what is it like for her when she travels to a new city? What is the, if she has to go to a different place, a different city, what is that like for her? Does it still feel like the same city? Does she make the city like the previous city to her mind, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's great. I think she has I read this word as having an underlying connection to urbanness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that she feels perfectly fine in whatever passes for a city in this world. And obviously she has a closer connection to her home city, but she can almost feel that hum in any city that she travels to.
Awesome. All right, that gives me lots of interesting things to think about. Are there any gifts from amongst the words that you're like, I'm definitely taking this one? Or are you still thinking about that?
I've not had a chance to look.
Yeah, there's so many good choices too. It's a hard pick on those. All right, well, we'll come back to you when we do around, and we'll ask about some of those facts and maybe get a couple of those on the table. Let's come to Brian. Brian, tell us about your character.
Sure. So my character is Anax, or Anax, or however you want to say it. And sort of my sense of her is, her three words are fertility, sea, and sky, and I'm still kind of playing around with how those line up with the facts in her background.
Mm-hmm.
But the sort of overwhelming sense I have of her at this point, and the pronouns I think may shift in play if that's not too confusing. Like,
oh no, that's fine.
She, her, and then maybe I added they as maybe a possibility. And she grew up. She's from the provinces, from some sort of small, little town with family that was kind of eager to kick her out of the nest, is my sense. And she moves to a bigger city, and she's sort of anonymous, and she's in this neighborhood, and there's sort of life going on around her, but she doesn't really connect with any of it. And my sense of her sort of coming into her words that there's some sort of accident. She's down in sort of the harbor area of town, and she, falls into the water. Somehow I feel like sea is the first word for her. She falls into the water. There's some sort of accident. It clearly would have been a fatal accident, but she realizes she's, breathing water. She feels, completely sort of at ease in the water in this strange way she never has before. And then she sort of returns to this neighborhood in the city and develops this, I don't know, starts slowly sort of coming into her power and developing connections with the people in her neighborhood. I guess that's kind of, I don't know, that's sort of where I'm at.
How old is she?
I'm thinking like early 20s as well.
Okay.
And like a young early 20s, like, you know, she came to the city, and I don't know what the former profession is. I put a guess as a fact, but I'm not convinced of that yet.
Okay.
And she's just really sort of, you know, the fertility is sort of coming online, and was really sort of crucial to her sort of finding her place. And, you know, so.
And in connection with the sea and the sky, I my sense is that you're talking about fertility in terms of like bounty.
Right? Yeah. Like sort of natural life in the water or something. And,
now you've got two words that are very distinct: the sky and the sea. You know, two realms of. So how do you picture those working together? Is it an oppositional thing? Is there some sort of crossover? What do you imagine?
I mean, I hadn't thought intensively about that, but Matt's point that sort of rain ties things together is actually a nice one. You know, I think that works really well. Actually, I think that, you know, that sort of keeps the two sea and sky things unified in a way that I think works. I think the fertility thing is something that it becomes a bigger and bigger part of her identity.
Now, what is her family like? Does she have siblings? Is she an orphan? Is she an only child? What do you imagine for that?
I think she has siblings, but I think it's the kind of family where, you know, she's one of many. She's not really, you know, nobody thinks much of her, and I feel like Onyx is not her, or Annex is not really her name. It's it's sort of a name she assumes because she feels like it represents strength and power and sounds, you know.
So people in your town, among your family, don't know that you have these divine gifts?
No, I don't think so.
Have you left home, or is it? Yeah. So, did they just go, oh, you know, that's another one we lost?
I think she went off to the big city. There's some sort of profession she was going to exercise, and they're like, okay, we can cross that one off the list. You know, she's out of our hands. We don't have to worry about it anymore. That's my sense of it.
You've got also, with those words, fertility, sea and sky, things that have a lot of implications and a lot of power to them. Which one of those came to her first? Was it the sea?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And was her reaction to that excitement, fear, wonder? How did she react to this sudden, I mean, quite jarring change for her?
I think my sense is that she, you know, had sort of been drifting through her life, and then when this sort of, you know, this power became evident to her, something kind of clicked, and, you know, she felt like this was, you know, finally her, you know, what she was meant to do. Kind of, there's a rightness there that, you know, in her profession, in her career, you know, in her childhood life, in her family, there was never any sort of sense of rightness there.
Is it a general sense of like, okay, I have a purpose now in this world, I've got to go out and do things, or does she have like a specific goal?
I think it's more just sort of a general. I think my sense of her is that, you know, and we'll see, I think, what happens.
Sure.
But, you know, I feel like there's a bit of a, you know, desire for power under the surface there, and that she, you know, she never really had that, and she's like, oh, I can use this to make people only thing in the neighborhood I'm in. And, you know, I think that's sort of how I see that playing out a little bit.
Awesome. I'll come back to you and ask about your facts in a second. Did you have any gifts that you like I'm definitely taking this one?
No, I'm pretty, mine are pretty neutral as well.
Okay. That sounds good. Then let's come to Matt. Matt, tell us about your character.
So my character's name is Vascos. He, him, as his pronouns. Vascos just means shepherd, so I would kind of think maybe it's just that he didn't have a name for a long time. You know, he just was the goat herd, and it just sort of stuck. And yeah, the words I chose are music, birds, and beasts.
Oh.
So I kind of think like, you know, like goats are these like stubborn creatures who like to sort of act under their own. They have their own ego, you know. So I'm kind of thinking maybe like it's like a lowly position, right? But it's also like he was sort of the goat herd in the town just because he could keep them. And actually, town's maybe not a great idea. I feel like he's from like way out, you know, like in like sort of farming territories, but you know, being a herder, he kind of moves across big swaths of land. I kind of
how old? How old are you thinking?
So I had a question about this.
Sure.
Are Godbound immortal? Like, in the sense of like do they die of old age?
I think so, because one of the things is that they're mortals that have, at least at this sort of level 1, have been gifted these powers, and then they have to kind of grow into them. I suspect when Godbounds get older, then they can achieve apotheosis and can achieve some kinds of immortality, but at least where you're at now, probably just the sort of base of the divine spark.
I gotcha. Yeah, so maybe he's really young. Maybe he's like 18. You know, like, and I had this idea that maybe he, one day he was like in the fields and heard like a bird speak to him, you know, and kind of followed it. And you know, all the goats followed him, and he sort of just like left the town and like left his responsibilities and just like wandered. And maybe that happened when he was like 15, 16, and he's been wandering for a few years now.
So less experience with civilization, but more experience with being out and seeing things in the world and surviving.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. Yeah.
And tell me about music. Like for you, how are you picturing what that means? Is it song? Is it instruments in particular, or is it everything?
Yeah, I think it's actually like specifically like the voice and maybe like whistling. You know, it's things that it's like the natural sounds that we make. It's something that he might have done, you know, like there's that image of like the shepherd lying and like writing like that pastoral poetry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I kind of think it's something along those lines, like song and poetry. And I sort of think that ties well in with the birds and the beasts, like that. Those are they're all natural sounds, you know. Like he's not an instrument player so much.
Do you imagine this is an interesting question? It's a weird question, but do you imagine that your gift with music comes from, you know, your connection to birds and bird songs? Or is it that your connection to birds comes because of your natural music talent?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of the latter.
Okay.
I think the music sort of precedes the birds and the beasts. Maybe there's sort of an inherent musicality in his voice, and it, that led to maybe they're sort of mutually supporting in a way, but that music is what gives him those other gifts.
And you have an 18 charisma, my goat herder friend. Is it that you are Greco-Roman handsome, or is it just charm of personality? How do you imagine that 18 charisma is expressed?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think just in terms of look, he, maybe a bit I don't know, like androgynous a little bit, and kind of, like long golden locks type thing, clean, very clean, shaven, but also he's sort of just like an easygoing person, and like a like extremely likable, or hopefully, and I think I kind of put that in as one of the facts is maybe he's like through moving in these rural spaces and wandering across all these lands, he's like come into contact with like a network of troubadours who sort of move throughout the land, and courts and things like that.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Picked up some skills that way. That makes sense. Have you chosen any of your gifts? Like, oh, this is one I definitely want to take.
Yeah, I got really into that process. Okay. So I picked out all my gifts.
Okay, well let's hear them.
So I got Shaper of the Sound, which gives Vascos complete control over sounds in an area within line of sight. That's like a greater gift, so it truly is complete control. And we can never our companions always succeed on sound-based stealth or listening checks.
That is super nice.
Yeah, that should be useful. I got Maker of Wings, which lets me create a small mob of mundane birds out of nothing, or a large mob, or to call a large mob of local birds that will arrive in 10 minutes. Yeah, so sort of birds as it's like a summoning type deal. Scent of the Prey is similar, except that specifically affects beasts, and it doesn't necessarily summon a mob. You just know where all the beasts are in a is it a mile radius? Oh, I'm sorry, I got these mixed up. Locations of all beasts within a mile radius, and I can call them to us. And then finally, I got Link of Unity, so you can bond with an animal, sort of like an animal companion.
And everyone should feel free to increase the font size on the gift text in this keeper, because this keeper was given to me and I adapted it, and I didn't realize it's like 3-point font on the gift description. So feel free to increase that if you need to. All right. That gives me a good sense of where you're at. What I want to come around, we have 3 facts about your hero. One of them should be about where they came from, which is sort of the origin. One of them should be kind of about how they acquired their skills, the things they did before maybe you awoke. And then the last fact should be about a relationship, something that you're connected to in this world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around and check, and I'm going to have start with you, Will. Will, tell me one of the facts that you've kind of got a good sense of what you want to have.
So where are my facts? Yeah, so I think my Cytherea's past career is as a messenger diplomat, which is like kind of an awkward phrase, but it's like in Cytherea's language, there's a specific word that this is. And basically, so you have all these like nomadic clans traveling around, and they each have their own territory, and there's a lot of strict rules about who can go where at what times, and breaking these rules can potentially lead to war between the clans. But then you have these people like Cytherea, and they have to be genderless, because it's like these rules they apply to men and women, but they don't apply to people who are neither man nor woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so Cytherea is kind of free to travel anywhere, and so is able to be like a messenger and a diplomat who unites the clans or brings word of things that matter to all of the clans.
So you've probably been to all of the, how many clans? Are we talking 13? Are we talking 100? Are we talking 5?
I think there's about a dozen.
Okay, so a good dozen clans. You've probably been to all the different lands, from the places where it gets colder to the places where it's slightly warmer, the lands that they migrate to in the summer and so on. Do you imagine, is this a case of where the nomads are in a pretty clearly defined area, or does that area kind of move and shift significantly? I'm thinking about the steppe tribes of the Urals and the Mongols and things like that. How those sometimes we get groups that would move over generations.
I think in this case, they're different clans, but they're all kind of the same. Like overarching ethnicity,
mm-hmm.
and they have a pretty prescribed area because they were driven out of wherever they lived a long time ago, and they basically live in the areas that nobody else wants. So it's a large area, but it's very poor, and that's why they have to have rules about who can graze where, because if they don't have that, then like if you are coming at a certain time with your flock and you find that this area has been grazed by someone else, that could be the difference between life and death for your clan.
Yeah. And I think so that gives us a good sense of what your origin fact is like about the steppe and what goes on there. I see you've written down a clan for your relationship. What does it tell us about the clan? What is it? What's important about your relationship to it?
I haven't really gotten anything more than than that's where I was born, and that's where my family comes from. And
that is perfect. Yeah, you can define that as we go along here, but it kind of gives us a good sense of that. Again, all of these facts, if you wanted to, just putting in a placeholder term is more than fine for these.
And the only other thing I want to say about my fact is like there's kind of a connection to the divine power, that it's like the laws don't apply to me, and also like cold doesn't apply to me, needing to eat doesn't apply to me, like the laws of nature don't apply to me either.
I like that very much. Lithienne, tell us about one of your facts. You're muted. You are muted, Dan. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm not. Okay, so this I think I covered some of these in the beginning, but the city that she was born in and that she sort of grew up in is called the City of Ashes. I named the clockmaker who kind of took her in, but I'm.
Why is it called the City of Ashes?
I thought it sounded cool.
Okay, all right.
Have anything
as it does.
I like it. No, it's a great name. That's why I asked. So that's great. And we kind of established some stuff about Sharthon. I know you've got both the guild and Sharthon, the clockmaker. Which do you think is the most important relationship to you? Is it about to your mentor? Or is it about to this guild?
I'm kind of imagining that the street urchins and burglars and folks have sort of formed this loose network. That's why it's guild in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think that's becoming more and more important to her.
Okay.
And she's growing up, and Charthen can't provide the education and support that she needs.
Is she an older person amongst this guild, or a younger person? Where does she stand in terms of the age here?
I think being in her early 20s, she is among the older ones.
Okay.
But maybe she's a little older than average, but there are a wide variety of folks in the group.
When people get older, do they stick around in the guild? Do they move on? Do they get arrested? Do they die off? What's the typical pattern?
I think they even if they're not active as burglars, they maintain a connection to them.
Moving on to some kind of legitimate trade, like clockmaking.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Anything else you want to tell us about those facts?
Not right now.
Okay. Sounds perfect. Brian, tell us about what you've got here for your facts.
Sure. I was trying to think of like a good profession. And at first I was like, oh, fertility. Like there's a midwifery connection there. And I was like, no, that's really boring. I think actually she was like, when she was sent by her family to work in the city, they were like, they found this seamstress or someone who did mending of clothes. And she, that's what she was supposed to be doing. And it was sort of, she always ended up getting sort of the drudgery. And she hated the sort of order that was, forced upon her, the sort of order of her day and the order of the clothes, and having to create clothes that sort of looked neat and nice. And so, I think that's sort of her past career, but she's really, she goes around in ill-fitting clothes. She's not, not at all sort of invested in this as a, it sort of defines her by opposition.
So her clothing kind of is more representation of the wildness that is contained within her. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about, you said she comes from the provinces and now come to the big city kind of thing. So from the farming communities. And what about for relationship? What do you think is the most like sort of key relationship right now?
Should this be with a single person or sort of a group of people? What do you think?
Group, organization, person, something that's significant might get on the table.
I think, I think it's the sort of the neighborhood that's adopted her, that she's sort of come to have this close relationship to, where, she, people come to her when they need, when they're not getting pregnant or something, or, when there's having, when that, there's sort of marital, sexual problems or something. And so she sort of has come to assume some power and have some relationship with all these different people in this little part of this bigger city who, see her as a resource or as a, source of, someone who could solve problems for them, kind of.
Okay, I'm going to think about that. I'm going to put that in my head. I will. Okay, I think that gives me a good sense of those facts. Vascos, Matt, what about you? Tell us about those facts as you've thought about them so far.
Yeah, so I put down origin as like scrublands, like maybe the village he was in is on the edge of like a big scrubby, bushy area, but he's since like kind of moved through lots of different landscapes from there. Maybe skirts the cities and like stays outside of them typically, but has sort of she encounters a lot of people on the road, maybe. And that's where I think he met this network of troubadours. And I think at first he was learning from them, and eventually, like, he's sort of now, I think he's kind of naive about the gift he has, right? And he's sort of like naively passing off these poems and songs that he's written to these troubadours, you know, who are performing them, and so like he's maybe kind of this like unknown, like secret bard in that group, in a way.
Yeah. And what do you think? How has the like growing up in the scrublands? How has that shaped his like perception about the rest of the world?
Yeah, I think well, you know, it's a hard life, right? Like living like farm, like trying to do agriculture in a place like that, right? Like goats are like one of the few animals that can live in places like that and graze, you know. So I think he sort of it's almost is like excited by like having moved around, right? Like the rest of the world is exciting to him, and he never knew how lush and green like the forest could be. He never had seen like a waterfall or like things like that. And I think maybe also just he's a little afraid of cities, I would think, just in the same way that like animals are.
Perfect. I have one more round of questions I'm going to ask that I'm going to come to each of you. And this is going to be about, like, we're going to assume at the start of this that you know each other, paths have crossed. And of course, we're going to start with a kind of hard framing the group, you know, paths crossed at the start. So I want to ask a question and have you, you know, identify a connection here now that we all kind of know what the characters are. So theory, we've now heard who the other three companions are. Of those three, which one of those people would be someone that you might look up to, that you might regard with a certain degree of respect or admiration? Even envy, I guess, would be another way to put it too.
I think that I would probably regard Lithian with respect and maybe envy when we're in the context of a city, because I really know nothing about cities. And that's clearly she's in her element there.
What was one thing that she did that like you were maybe a little bit in awe of?
I think I'm not sure how I first came into contact with Lithian, but I think when we were together and I saw how Lithian could move through the city and could blend into the city just the same as one could blend into the wilderness.
As you journey across the landscape, she can journey across the city. Something like that?
Because like, you know, 1,000 miles of steppe is not a big deal for me, but crossing a few city blocks is disorienting and bewildering.
I like that. Lithian, which of the of your three companions are you most worried about? Like you've lived in the big city, you've been around things. Which of these other three are going to get eaten up by life in your imagination? Oh, you mean?
I literally spend all day on Zoom.
I know. I did.
No, I'm playing the game. I think she is worried about an axe. Did I say that right, Ryan? And I think she's worried about an axe because they kind of deal with the inhabitants of a city differently. And Lithian is afraid that an axe will, even though she's she is forming all these connections with her neighborhood, that she's going to be betrayed one day.
I like that. That's a good way to see that. An axe. Which of the others did you have a portentous dream about before you ever met them, and what did you see in that dream?
That's a good question. I'm going to say it's a theory.
Okay.
And I don't know. Let me think about what NX saw in that dream. I feel like NX saw let's see. Cytherea coming to at sort of the, head of a large group of people of these, Cytherea has, is associated with these clans. And so I feel like Cytherea has the dream involved, Cytherea involves Cytherea sort of with these clans at sort of the head of a seething mass of clans, but that maybe a way to think about it is that there are these clans that were sort of moving across the land, and maybe because Anax is sort of preoccupied with fertility and sort of life, it seemed like Cytherea, and these clans were sort of despoiling the territories they passed across, or that there was a sort of deep, maybe it's that. Maybe it's that Cytherea comes from, the steppe, but the sort of thing that stayed with her is it seemed that these clans, moving into these spaces that nobody wants, were, in some way doing violence to the fertility of the land. Something along those lines.
Interesting. So the clans on the move is to do with the fertility of the land. That there is some destruction to it. It may mean that they're going to have to move soon. It may mean that their lands are going to change, or it may mean a threat from these forces. I like that. Last one. Vascos, choose one of the others. Before you ever met them, you heard rumors about them. What were those rumors? And when you met them, did you think they were right or wrong?
I think I must have heard about Cytherea, just because, out there in the wilderness, we hear about these warrior clans, and really they're nomadic clans who have this great warrior, and I think I heard something about like her skill with, or excuse me, their skill with a bow, and their ability to strike a target through a wall, and like to strike a target like miles and miles away, and at first I think Vascos didn't believe that about them, that
Mm-hmm.
that could even be possible, but I think there has been evidence that such things are possible with Cytherea, and maybe there's a kind of awe there. Yeah, I think it must have to do with prowess in, maybe the specific rumor was like that Cytherea actually like killed someone important that way.
And now, having met Cytherea and this tale of Cytherea having struck down this powerful leader, do you believe that they did it, or do you believe that that's an exaggeration?
I think he believes. I think he kind of thinks like, oh well, Cytherea would tell me if this were the case, and maybe he's not like a suspicious person in any way. So I guess maybe it's like he doesn't necessarily believe it until Cytherea tells him that's true.
Perfect. We're going to take a break. Let's go to about 20 after. That gives about 8 minutes. When we come back, we're going to bring ourselves into a city, and I'm going to set up some stuff, and we'll talk about why we're there, and we will get rolling. Sound okay? Okay. So I will pause recording. Does anyone have any mechanical questions, anything like that, before I get rolling here?
Is it possible to change words?
In the rules, no. In the way I play, yeah. So that if you like decide after a session or two, you're like, nope, this word isn't what I want. It is possible that it is also possible to get new words.
Okay.
In the course of play. So I imagine that the City of Ashes is on the coast. I imagine we have, with a name like that, it feels like a city-state. We've kind of described in the course of this the idea of these steppe nomads over of an area up to the north. And there's been some suggestion that there's been some motion, some change of things. Cytherea, what has been the event, disaster, or change that has forced the nomads to maybe move further or start to push against other areas in the last couple of years?
Trying to think of an answer that just isn't straight out of Game of Thrones, but I think I think it's been a blight that is spreading in the north,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like some kind of like poisonous magical phenomenon that is spreading and is kind of like poisoning the livestock that graze on the land.
And I imagine that there are some other buffer city-states between the steppes and the City of Ashes. And for the purpose of this, I'm imagining that we're on kind of a western coast. So the ocean is off to the west of the city. Got the north, we've got the steppe nomads, probably a couple of other city-states there. The nation that lies to the immediate east in the last few years has started to become more aggressive, has started to push in. They're an actual sort of more unified, far-reaching force. Lithian, what is it magical or organizational or spiritual? What is it that is sort of giving those people, that country to the east, some kind of edge?
Like it gives them an edge over the City of Ashes?
Yeah, like they're starting to expand and push. So what is it that has allowed them to start to expand as they are?
I think there's a new leader that has emerged that's creating greater unity in the nation. And so I'm still imagining the world is recovering from the fall that happened when the gods disappeared.
Yeah.
So that's a gradual recovery. And so this Eastern nation has, a leader has emerged and is pulling them together, and they're starting to get organized a little bit better.
So I'm going to call that country Lacosto. And it lies to the east and has a strong leader. It's risen up. It's probably swallowed a few smaller areas, but access to the coast, there's, City of Ashes is not the only one, but there are other city-states that lie along that, and it is a rich target, as well as this sort of push from the north. Anax, what is the challenge or threat right now lying out to sea? Is it monsters? Is it storms? Is it pirates? Is it another country? What is the challenge then to the west?
You think?
Sure.
I'm kind of imagining some sort of recurring threat. So, something that like every, 15 years or something, the tides, there's some sort of tidal change. And so there's all sorts of, I think my sense is that it's sort of all sorts of things. It's like, there's the tides shift in such a way and the currents shift in such a way that there's more pirates that have access to that are more present threat. There's sort of, there's the sea monsters everybody knows and is used to, but because the current has shifted, then there's this whole sort of new crop of creatures that the city has to contend with.
Do you imagine that it's like every 15 years everything changes and people have to adjust, or do you imagine that like at the 15th year there is the year of bad storms or the year of the bad sea, and then it returns back?
In my head, I was going back and forth between the two. I kind of like the idea of the year of the bad sea.
Okay. Yeah. So omens, messages, portents, people have known for a while that this is coming, and everything bad, of course, comes at once.
Maybe this is it's a little winter is coming, but
Sure. That seems fair. Voskos, your provinces and things probably lie to the south, probably somewhat inland. There are probably several of these smaller pastoral agricultural societies or cultures, countries that lie to the south of the City of Ashes. One of them has suffered a catastrophe. there are these things called the night roads. That these are old roads that were used by the sorcerers in their wars against the gods that moved across realms. They reach into the bad places, and sometimes they open up and disaster follows. So this nation lying to the south of the City of Ashes has had one of these night roads open up in it. What has emerged? What is the thing that has come out? Sorcerers, mechanicians, plagues, undead. What do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe it's like a demon, but I'm kind of thinking less in terms of like an embodied guy with horns, and like more of a sort of possessing darkness, and maybe like maybe demon's not the right word for it, but like that's what they're calling it. I think of it as like a kind of a black mist, or a black shadow.
It's expanding. People are seeing it. It's been out maybe at the fringes, but now it's starting to be seen more and more closer to populated areas. People don't know how to deal with it. Human, magics and sorcerers have had no effect on it, and it shifts and changes. We'll call that country Azyam. So we're going to start with the four of you in the City of Ashes, and I'm going to set up a little bit of what's been happening in the last few weeks here that might draw your attention, and then we're going to kind of hard frame a scene of the four of you. You all know each other's talents, know each other's powers, have met, have crossed paths, and it's not unusual for the four of you to be kind of drawn together by fate when things have gone on. In the last few weeks, the leadership of the City of Ashes has started to lock down the gates at night, have started to move some of the guards and military out to outposts in an unusual way, and have started to push people out from certain areas. It's not entirely clear why. There's no reason being given for it. Also, rumors have begun to kind of haunt the countryside of there being something that is out there, some beast that is preying on the populace out there. Though that's all rumors, and no one from essentially the nobility, the leadership of the City of Ashes has said anything. But the other thing that has been an issue that would bother you, Lithen, is that in recent weeks, some of the arrests and criminals and things like that, they have gone missing from the prisons, and rumor has been that they are being moved out to assist the military in whatever thing they're doing out in the countryside. And people are very nervous and upset. And there's a general feeling that things are getting dark here. No one's sure what's happening. No one's sure kind of who's in charge, if the leaders are just planning on looting the city and getting out, or if there's something else going on. So assuming that the four of you would meet, would gather together, what kind of place would you meet with these your fellow Godbound, Lithian? Would it be a tavern? Would it be a hideout? Would it be something more public? What would you imagine?
The first thing that popped into my head was kind of a city park, and I think it's maybe not perfectly flat, but there's kind of it's a fairly large park within the city, and it's fairly hilly, and it's got an inlet from the ocean, and so it sort of represents all the different aspects of the four of us, which is why it's kind of comforting to all of us, and is a place where we can have candid conversations.
So the four of you are there. There's all kinds of weirdness going on in the city that you're not entirely certain about. So when we bring the camera in on you, an axe, what do you think is foremost in your mind? What are you saying to the others?
Between the threat from Licosto, from Aziem, the, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I think Anax is most concerned that we've dealt with leaders have risen and fallen. Everybody knows stories of city states coming to power and prominence and declining again. But we all know that the night roads are a bad situation, and that's probably and we've weathered the year of the bad sea before, but the night roads is something we should prioritize.
Vasquez, what's your feeling? Where do your stakes and passions lie?
I think Vasquez sympathizes with Anax's desire to go towards the south and investigate the lands where he's from. But on the other hand, he's a wanderer who left them long ago, and so it would be a weird sort of homecoming thing. I think maybe for him, it's this beast in the countryside that he just assumes, possibly naively, that it's just a misunderstood animal, and he wants to save it before the military gets to it.
Interesting. And Cytherea, where are you leaning towards?
I think maybe the reason Cytherea is in this city is to try and broker a peace deal that will allow the clans to spend the winter in the territory of the City of Ashes. And it's kind of a case of like, either we're coming peacefully or we're coming anyway, because we have nowhere else to go because of this blight.
And I think you've been probably annoyed over the last several days of being completely rebuffed in your attempts to get in to speak with anyone. Like, clearly there are other matters that are occupying them. And I imagine, let me ask you this. This is actually a really good question before we move any further, to give myself a picture. Lithienne, what do you look like?
That is a harder question than I thought you were going to ask.
Okay.
I don't think she's very big, not very tall. She is pretty, but you wouldn't know it because she is really careful about kind of disguising her features, and just the city's word that helps her kind of blend in to the city kind of creates features on her face and her skin that look like stone or concrete or wood, things that kind of let her make her seem to kind of blend in with the city. I think other than that, her hands are fairly rough from climbing and grabbing and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that being said, she's got fairly bright, inquisitive eyes. So it's almost sort of this tell of her naivete, almost, of being around other people. They help her see kind of in sewers and things like that. But,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's kind of a upright and inquisitiveness there.
And I imagine your clothing, all of that is that same sort of brown and stone and gray for the blending in with the city.
Yeah, but she's not unkempt, and
Okay.
and the clothing is not of poor quality. She's done enough burglaring in her life where she's been able to kind of get herself some comfortable clothes.
And an axe, I know you described your clothing as kind of, well, a little bit wildly sewn and so on, but what does an axe look like?
I think she's sort of medium build, but like, I like that phrase, by the way, wildly sewn. I think she's sort of medium build, but then she grew up in this household where, all of her, brothers would be sort of fighting for food, and she never really, bothered. So she looks a little malnourished, maybe, or a little, I don't know if that works for fertility, but she, she's a little sort of.
It's a good contrast. I like that, though.
Yeah, a little narrower in the face than you'd think, than you might think otherwise.
Hair? What kind of what's the hair look like?
I think that hair is that's the one thing she thinks, like, sewing shears are good for, and so she sort of just giving herself sort of a quick, efficient haircut.
Okay.
So it sort of varies by the day, depending what she's in the mood for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bright colors, dull colors?
C would be sort of suggest sort of blues and greens,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's a mix. I think there's sort of a, I'm envisioning some sort of weird,
Patchwork
of, yeah.
Okay. Nice. Vascos, what do you look like?
I think I imagine Vascos as having sort of long, like almost like platinum locks of hair, and just being, like I was saying before, like kind of androgynous in build and in sort of look, maybe kind of slight build, and I think he's like handsome, but not in a celebrity type way, but
Okay.
maybe in that, like, sort of like rustic, like sort of trustworthy type way in it or something, like,
Okay.
sort of like he just has that look that, I know him or something.
Mm-hmm. All right. You described the golden hair before, so we have a sense of that. And then Cytheri, what do you look like?
I have long dark hair that I keep in a tight ponytail, and I wear kind of like tough hide armor and don't really take it off ever, which is maybe a bit of a faux pas in the city, but I don't understand that. And I have this big, beautiful longbow that is like strapped to my back. And I have sort of learned that maybe it's better to leave the longbow behind when going indoors, because that just freaks people out. And besides, I have the magical power to summon the longbow into my hands whenever I want. So
yeah. At the end, you kind of do talking to your companions. What is foremost in your mind right now? What is your foremost concern?
I am acutely aware of all of the things that threaten my city, and there's part of me that wants to address all of them. But I know that the, what did we call it? The year of bad seas, even though it's something that we deal with every 15 years, memories are short these days, and we don't have great way of dealing with it, and that will hurt. That will create more vulnerability in the city, and it will hurt our ability to trade and get supplies in. And so I know that if we don't deal with that, we can't really effectively deal with any of the other threats.
And you are acutely aware of everything that goes on in the city. And so you are acutely aware when a group of guards kind of come into the outskirts of the park. These are the guards from one of what might be called the dukes of the city, dressed in particular red livery and cloaks of that. And they're trying to look particularly casual as they move through here, but they definitely are moving with a purpose to kind of, you're not sure if they're looking for one of you or all of you, but they are moving in that way that says to you that there's something significant at play here. What would you do?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sorry.
I would say we have company. This is one of the noble houses in the city that is more corrupt, even more corrupt than the others.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should find out what they want. They're probably here for trouble.
So yeah, they are moving. Anax, what would you do?
I mean, Anax is reluctant to sort of cause trouble, and doesn't necessarily want to engage them and frontally engage them, but there's ways we can manage this situation without direct bloodshed or direct attacks. So Anax is thinking we could certainly get them lost in a have them get lost in a mist for hours on end, and finish our conversation as needed and make our way out of the city.
Do you have a gift you want to use to call something up?
Yeah, I think that she has a gift. The cloud. I'll burn one of the points and grab the clouds below. I like that one.
And let me tell you something else too. You can always perform a miracle with one of your words, which means you kind of say, hey, I just want to do this effect.
Yep.
I'm going to commit effort for the day and do this thing. It's a little bit costly,
mm-hmm.
But it is a way to do if you don't want to necessarily purchase a gift.
Yeah. Let's do that, actually.
Okay.
I mean, I like the clouds below a lot, but I'm not sure,
Not sure if you want to commit to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me what that looks like. What do we see happen?
So we see these, we can sort of watch them progress. And they just sort of they sort of think they're coming towards us, and this sort of from the ground there's this sort of, to us it looks like sort of a incorporeal mist, but you can see that when they're walking, they sort of change where they're walking, and they started out walking casually but sort of directly towards us, and as they something in the way they're perceiving where we are, they're just sort of going, they end up sort of cycling around us for a while,
kind of caught in a labyrinth of this mist. And
yeah.
Okay. That you'll the four of you you'll see that come up and close in on them. The thing that will strike you as they're doing that, you're hearing some conversation about, okay, what's going on. They're still trying to be subtle, but there's a moment when you will see this flash, and you see like a pair of eyes, reddish, kind of flash in the mist, like unusual, something certainly not normal on one of these guardsmen, though it doesn't seem to penetrate your Godbound powers, but clearly something attempting to pierce the veil of this. Vascos, what do you think?
So I think this would just be something that Vascos did every time we were to have a meeting like this, which is to sort of create this bubble of sound around us, so that we can hear each other's voices, and we can hear what's coming from outside, but they can't hear us.
Perfect.
And I think also, just like being ready to like slip away. We can move this bubble we can take this with us. We can continue our conversation elsewhere if needed.
You have mist to cover the visual. You have this cone of silence to cover the auditory. And you can move it with you. I kind of get up and kind of deciding where you want to head from there. And so, Theory, what do you think?
Well, I've been sort of dealing with bureaucrats and guards for the past week and not having any luck. So I would be more inclined to confront them head on. But I've learned to defer to, especially to Lithian in the city, because often my preconceptions about how things work in the city turn out to be wrong.
How do we know that you're kind of curbing your instincts here? What do we see that tells us that?
I think the others, look away for a second at the guards, and then when they look back, my longbow is no longer on my back; it's in my hands, and I have an arrow that's knocked. And I'm just sort of like, if they do get through the bubble of sound and the mist and whatever else you can summon, I'm ready to start shooting.
And Lithian, your compatriots have provided extreme cover. Cytherea is willing to start gunning down these authorities. What do you do? What's your take on this? And you will see the flashing eyes as well, which strikes you as unusual.
I express my gratitude. Thank you all. And as usual, you've made our meetings convenient and safe for all of us. Cytherea, I don't think that bow will be necessary, but I appreciate your efficiency with it. Did anyone else see the eyes?
Yeah, I think all four of you would have seen that flash of the eyes in the mist there.
Is there any way I could try and understand what it is?
Yeah. Let's have you make an intelligence check.
Great. Okay.
So what you want to roll is you want to roll roll over the check number.
I see a roll dice with friends dice.
Oh, I've got both roll dice with friends and a roll for your party. I've got both of those in there. Either one, because roll for your party has been weird.
Yes.
As I've told others, I have someone working on getting a new instance set up for us. So,
all right, I'm going into the roll dice with friends. So I roll a d20.
Yeah, and you want to essentially, you've got a decent intelligence. So you want a better than a 7.
Well, guess what? I rolled a 2.
So this is not like anything you've seen before. It's definitely magical. It's not anything you've ever seen on the guards before. And that raises the hackles on the back of your neck. But as to what exactly it is, you're uncertain.
I'm wondering if I can invoke the city to tap into the network of people that I know, to ask them about it, to see if any of our kind of burglars who also happen to be sorcerers might be familiar with this phenomenon.
Interesting. So I want to use that as like a miracle kind of thing, or do you think or is it like part of your base effect of your word? What do you think?
Well, no, because the city says they can move anywhere in the city.
Yeah. So do you want to do this as a miracle, or do you have, or is there, yeah, okay.
Except a point of effort, apparently.
Yeah, you commit that for the day. And what do you imagine, what is a special effect that we see to know that you're reaching out to gather this information?
I feel like she touches a nearby like a human constructed thing. So the park has some natural elements, but it also has maybe we're meeting around a gazebo or something. So I'm sort of touching a structure, right, which is very much city-like, and I use that almost as a antenna to transmit a message to the other denizens of the city. To see if they can conduct this research for us.
And you will reach out. Essentially, it's the city kind of pulling in the thoughts and the words and doing this sort of instantaneously for you. I imagine that some of it is about provoking people to just kind of speak out loud about things they know of this, and you will get this broad picture. You've mentioned that this Duke, and we're going to call him, we're going to call these Dukes the Padans, and his name is Despot. So Padan Despot, just to make it as sinister as we can. And that in the last few weeks, he has been pushing and like calling in debts and maneuvering things and has been very active, but also people who have been burglars who have been moving in on his places, or even one that recently tried to break into his tower spoke about seeing unusual things, unusual magics. And one person describes having been on the grounds and having seen what appeared to them to be a demon in one moment and then appeared like a guard in another. And that seems to be the general consensus, is that he is trafficking with strange powers and clearly looking to maybe loot the city at this moment. Does that seem like fair info?
Yeah, I like it. That was great. I convey this to my compatriots, but use basically indicate that Padan Despot is likely trying to undermine the city, take advantage of all the things that are about to befall it, to loot the city and make off, and has been tapping in to these magics. I suggest that we go investigate his castle, his place.
Yeah, we described his livery as being in red, so he probably has. We'll say that the various pedons have towers in the city with estates on them, and essentially he controls the red tower in the city of Ashes. Anax Vascos, are you good with that, or is there anything you want to do before you move on?
I'd like to conjure a sparrow, sort of just like produce it in my hand, and ask it to follow these guards, or to keep an eye on these guards, and to come to me, like give it a location that is a scene's worth away, and just to report on it.
Yeah.
Tell me what these guards are doing.
Sure. It will appear. It will fly. It will move itself so that it can get to the edge of the mist and wait for them to come out. And it can report back to you in the next scene what they do. Anax, anything you want to do before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Cytherea, are you good before we move forward?
Yeah, I'll move forward, grumbling about the complex and corrupt leadership of the city.
And I think we do the wipe, and we will see ourselves at the area of the red tower. Probably get maybe a pullback shot. We can now see that there are 7 of these towers in the city at various points. That maybe there were more in the past. We can probably see ruins of a few of them. They probably don't serve their original purpose. They've been given over to the noble families. We know that they have, walls around them. We've got a great tower. Will, what's another detail or feature of these of the red tower as you approach? It's compound, walled in tower. What else is perhaps ominous here?
I think there's a lot of torches burning on the walls and bonfires in the grounds, more so than normal.
Yeah, laying up a certain kind of oily smoke from all of them, kind of carrying up into the night sky. There are guards on the walls here. There is outside of it probably a petitioner's area and some other kind of buildings that serve it, but most of the activity seems to be on the inside. So I hate throwing a question open to the full table, but I'm going to put this: how does the group want to approach this? Is there investigation you want to do ahead of time, or do you have an idea of how to get in, or what would you like to do? Any ideas or suggestions? Because you get so many powers, I don't know what they are. So I have to ask this more generally than I usually would.
Go ahead, Will.
Oh, I was just going to say I have a journeying power that would let me kind of create a convenient opening into a location. And that's kind of Cytherea's on like the direct path. Like, let's just walk in, find the pedon, and ask him what's going on.
And what do you guys think of that plan?
I think moving us into a place where we can hear him, I can be certain that behind closed doors, the sound will reach us. So we can be a bit more subtle than that. But you know, you're the great warrior.
Yeah, I think NX defers to Lithian and her knowledge of, you know, gaining access to places that, you know, people might not want us to gain access to.
Cytheria, I know you're tired of courtly interactions and diplomacy, and there will be action soon enough. But I'm wondering if we use your cover as a diplomat to gain entrance into the tower, and you can engage in negotiations, and the rest of us, whether it be climbing walls or talking to rats, get some more information out of the tower, while you keep the Padan busy with the negotiations. Maybe you can even use some of your charm to learn some stuff directly from him.
Well, I don't know if the Padan will even see me. They don't recognize the authority of the messenger from the steppes in this city, unfortunately. And I've been trying to get audiences with various Padans, and it hasn't worked, but I might be able to at least get inside the building.
That's all we need, is to get inside.
So, Cytheria, you wish to go and perhaps present your diplomatic credentials, see if you can make your way in, and then we'll check in and figure out other people are going in. Cytheria will go up to the gates of this facility. Again, painted red. There are guardsmen that are there. What do you suppose is the marker that you have that is sort of the universal symbol to say I'm a diplomat, or I'm a courier, or something of that sort?
I think it's actually like this kind of sigil that is inked onto an ancient cowhide, and it's like very finely worked, but it's kind of like, in this city, you know, official papers are on paper, and maybe this is part of the reason why I haven't had much luck, is that, you know, I unroll my official seal and they're like, what's that stinky cowhide that you're shoving in my face?
I think this is perfect. What I'll have you make is a charisma roll, and you've got a fact that applies to this, so we'll give you a +4. You want to get a 9 or better because of your charisma check.
So I'm rolling a d20 and adding 4 and then trying to get a 9 or better?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. I got a 19, so...
The guard person who's at the gate kind of looks at this and nods and goes in, and you know, a couple minutes later the doors come open and this incredibly obsequious seneschal comes forward. Oh, so there you are, of the Plains people. I'm so sorry. We had word that you were speaking with the other Padans throughout the city, and we're very glad to have you come. Please, you are by yourself? No. We're good. It's very good to have you. Come in. My lord, the spot is occupied at the moment, but if you come in and wait, he will be seeing you shortly. Is that acceptable?
Just kind of glare stonily at the seneschal and then follow them.
Good, so good. And he leads you inside the gates. So we kind of cut from that to Lithian, Anax, and Vascos. Lithian, what's your plan?
I think I'm going to pick a gift.
Ooh.
Alacrity has a lesser gift, of all directions as one. Oh, I missed this. Heroes with the alacrity word can be surprised. They may increase their dexterity to 16 or to 18 if it's already 16 or higher. I had assigned 16 to my dex.
Oh yeah, take it up to an 18.
Cool. All right, sorry about that. And then she got a lesser gift called All Directions as One. You can navigate vertical or overhanging surfaces as if they were flat ground. Yeah. No,
so you're just kind of running over the walls and making your way in?
I'm just climbing right up the tower.
Okay. You'll kind of come to the side of the building, that kind of the outer wall where the tower is kind of attached to, and we see you move up. And let's have you make a dexterity check not to be seen. There are so many guards around here.
Okay.
I think your past career can apply as a bonus to this.
Okay. I rolled an 18.
Okay. You didn't roll a 1, so you do it. So what does that look like when you move alongside? Is it literally that it's like you're walking straight up, or is there what do we see?
Yeah, I don't think she's Spider-Manning at all. I think she's literally, she just sort of puts a boot up on the side and kind of walks straight up, and her city's word kind of gives her a little bit of sense of and kind of her garb gives her a sense of how she can blend in best with this.
Absolutely. So we will see you move up, and are you looking for any kind of window, or you want to get to the top? What are you trying to do?
I think I'm trying to get to as close to the top as I can. I'm not going to walk all the way up, but I want to get into one of the top floors, assuming that's maybe my understanding of the city. I know that's the study of a advisor to the Padan who probably knows a bit about sorcery.
Absolutely. So you'll kind of open one of these windows, kind of take a look in, and kind of pop into a little bit of light comes in, and you can see there's the library walls and the instruments of a very poor human sorcerer here.
Right.
Anax, Vascos, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think it's probably time to buy a similar gift. I think a lesser gift for Sky is Sapphire Wings, which, means flight at twice the normal rate.
Mm-hmm.
So rate of movement. So I feel like that's, that makes sense.
Are you, do you want to just hop over the walls with that, or do you want to fly up to the top of the tower with that?
I think NX wants to sort of fly around the tower and see what she can see.
Okay.
And just sort of see, I think that, she could always change the weather if she needs to obscure herself or something.
Okay. Yeah, you can, you've got so what is it you do to obscure yourself? Are you doing a miracle, or do you have a particular gift that allows you to do that?
Let me buy both Sapphire Wings and Windsinger.
Okay.
So, I think there's, Windsinger is controlling weather, I think. And so, let's just say there's a bit of a rainstorm that, makes it just a little bit hard to, do we nail down what time of day we're doing this?
Let's say evening. I think it makes sense. So yeah, you darken the sky. You're able to fly around, and you're just trying to get a sense of things. What does he want?
Exactly.
What does he want to know?
I think Lithia and Lithia and maybe the others will have a clearer idea of what, the ways of these fine pedans, but Annex just wants to see, get sort of eyeballs on, what the activity of the tower overall kind of looks like. What's sort of the general, are people sort of rushing around in a hurry? Is there sort of deliberate planning? Does it seem like there's deliberate planning underway?
It seems to you, especially in the upper levels of the tower, that it is very quiet, like ominously quiet. Like there aren't people up in those levels. There's clearly some people up in sort of the top tower, which might be like one of the pedans' chambers, but other than that, it's weird because these towers are supposed to be used for official functions and things like that, but they're clearly not being used that way. Does that seem like a fair answer?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Let me come to Anax.
You mean Vascos?
Sorry, Vascos. I apologize.
That's all right. So I think what I'm going to do is sort of I can also fly, and so maybe I'll fly to the top of the tower, like on the top of the tower.
Okay.
And sort of perch there, and I'm gonna use my my gift, Scent of the Prey, to get an awareness of all types of beasts within a mile radius. I'm focusing in on the tower. I'm trying to find like a cat or a rat or something that lives in this tower, or even like a raven or something, like maybe that lives in this tower that can sort of give me the lay of the land and potentially also go listen to the conversation that's happening behind closed doors right now.
Sure. I think a rat makes the most sense given the setup. And what is it you want to learn using this rat to kind of gain its awareness?
I want to learn who has been coming and going, like in the Padan's areas. What types of people. I'm sure the rat doesn't know like names and stuff like that, but maybe I offer even like a little bit of food or something and just sort of entice it to go watch, and also just I really just want to know like who's been in and around, and like does he sense anything like dark or magical?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The rat says this place is bad. Rat says this place is bad. All the cheese is stinky. All things are wrong. But only the big one and the twins. Those are the only three that come into the upper parts of the tower anymore. No more people leaving food out. Any of the good times, that has stopped. Only those three come anywhere up. Mostly they stay in the lower parts.
I sense your struggle, little one. Here's a morsel. If you tell me a bit more about these twins, I can see if I can find more food for you.
They look alike. They are the same, but not the same. One is girl, one is boy, but they are the same.
And are they always coming together, or do they stay apart?
They are usually together at the beck and call of the big one.
Big one.
Does that seem like fair info?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sathiri, you're sat down. Food is brought, laid out respectfully for you, and it's just a few moments later that you'll see this gentleman come in, tall, straight-backed, beautiful red livery clothing, kind of stitched with gold, a very close-cropped dark black beard, very elegantly done. Hair is perfect, and he comes and he's like, "You must be the representative of the steppe. I had heard word that you had come. I apologize for not having a chance to see you before. May I sit? Shall we talk?"
Very well.
"I am Padan Despot. How can I be of assistance to a beautiful young person like yourself?"
I will say in this sort of like stilted dialect that it's kind of like, I learned this language from a book or something. But basically, I'm going to say I speak for all the clans of the steppe, and I unroll my scroll and I kind of show that there's like different things embroidered in it that represent all of the different clans that it's like their signature. And I say, have you heard news of the blight in the north?
"I have." And he says, and he stands up and he comes over to kind of stand next to you and kind of lean in so they can look at this document that's on the table in front of you, and stands closer than is comfortable. "This I see. Yes, I see the signatures here. Yes, I have heard of the blight. Tell me." Kind of looks down at you. How has it affected you?"
I will say, I need to speak clearly. There is no time for dissembling.
Dissembling?
The clans need to move south during this winter or they will not survive. And I have come to ask for the protection of the City of Ashes on behalf of the clans.
You asked this, but I am not entirely certain the City of Ashes can protect its own.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, this is a terrible year. Many things are afoot. But perhaps you and I can come to some kind of understanding. Obviously, you would not expect us to allow you to come in without some kind of recompense, correct?
The clans have many skills.
Skills.
They're great warriors and masters of herding and craft. Perhaps these other threats that threaten the city, perhaps the help of the clans would be quite useful. For example, I've heard rumors of this some sort of strange beast in the wilderness around the city.
That's just a rumor and a legend. It has no truth to it.
Okay, well, good, fine.
But the idea of a private force of barbarians from the north at my beck and call does seem to does certainly interest me. Perhaps we could work out something, and I could speak to the council and be your advocate in these things.
Well, I'm not sure about beck and call, but the clans are willing to promise aid to the people of the city and the surrounding lands where it's necessary.
Stop. Interesting. And have you brought many gifts or such to show your good intentions?
I've traveled light because I needed to go quickly and the matter was urgent.
That's a no then. and he steps back and kind of sits. He's clearly been trying to get into your personal space there, but you don't really react. And he does go and moves back and sits. And he says, "Well, you talk in vagaries, very, 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 very general terms. I will have to consider this."
Well, thank you for considering it.
Would you like some more to drink?
Kind of make a face. I don't really like this foreign liquor, but I will say thank you, and I don't know, take one glass of whatever it is that's being served.
Okay. And he sits across, his eyes kind of boring into you, and it kind of gets that cold, awkward silence, like he's clearly he's trying to figure something out in his head. Luthien, you will come into this room. It looks like at one point it was some kind of sorcerer's chambers or used for that. There are two things that strike you. One is that on sort of a side table, there are these red orbs, almost look like big rubies. Perhaps a dozen of them. They're kind of irregular in shape, and they're laid out on one of the tables there. The other thing is the amount of blood that's on the floor and walls that has not been cleaned up. Like the rug is kind of soaked with it. The books have some backsplash on it, that kind of thing. Someone was clearly killed here a couple of weeks ago, and no attempt has been made to deal with that. What do you want to do?
So it seems like the blood is the blood of a single kill, not sort of sacrifices.
Oh yeah, no, I think you have enough judgment, enough background to say someone was murdered in here in a particularly brutal fashion. The body was clearly disposed of, but the scene has not been cleaned. Clearly, they didn't care in any way about that.
Are the rubies interesting to me because they look valuable or because they look powerful?
They look interesting to you because they seem to be calcified, crystallized human souls.
Oh, right.
Like when you go over and kind of look at them and you're like, oh
boy. Fresh souls, I assume.
Yes. Well, there's something has happened to them. How fresh they are for this, but uncertain.
Do I see any machinery or any kind of devices around?
There are definitely some like sorceress tools and things like that. The one thing you will see is it does look like there is a basin and some tools, and you will see that laying next to it is a thing that's a little bit larger than one of these rubies, but it's kind of caked in like soil or something. It almost looks like they must put that in the basin and clean it, like the ruby is inside of that. It almost looks like an owl pellet. You know how owls eat? Yeah.
So I can see the hints of maybe that ruby inside of it.
Yeah. They clearly clean it off, and these rubies are inside.
Okay. Does it look like the blood goes out one of the doors? Was the body dragged out?
Yeah, there probably would be. There's a door that you guess goes out into the hall. There might be a couple of other smaller rooms on this, and probably the stairs that go up and down, up to the top level, and then down to the next level below this.
Okay. I don't want to spend too much time.
Well, let me. We have a couple of flying people, so let me check in with our sapphire winged folk, and maybe we can bring paths across. Anax, you've scouted the area, you've taken a look around, and you would have seen Luthien go in one of these windows up there, in one of these unlit rooms. The chambers up above are lit. What do you want to do?
I think Anax wants to, check in with Voskos and see what's going on.
Voskos is up on top of the roof.
Yep. I think she's still, there's a side of her that it still gets a kick out of sitting at the top of a high tower and sort of kicking her legs. And so even in the middle of a, somewhat tense situation. So I think she's, hops down and is sort of asking what he's been finding out. And we're sort of sharing notes on what's going on at the upper levels of the tower.
Yeah, so Voskos, you and Anax are up there, can talk. The rat is giving you this information.
Yeah, I'd share about the twins and the fact that he's not seeing any other dignitaries other than Cytheri. I guess maybe you come upon me sitting there talking to a rat, and I'm sure you've seen this kind of thing before, but it's always a little strange, I guess. And I think maybe I will try to get the rat to lead me to the twins' chambers.
The rat will go. The rat goes. You're on top of the chambers. They're in the chamber down below. We're on the roof. It's in the main chamber right below us.
Should we go down there, Anax?
Sure. Yeah, I can, whip up a little bit of cover so we can, have a, be able to look inside this room and see what's going on without, raising too many, hackles or getting anyone's attention.
Yeah, I think what we can do is, we're both flying, right? So maybe we can sort of hover around the windows up there, and I can bring the sound through. I guess I can't. It's got to be within my line of sight, huh? So, do they have a window?
Oh yeah, there's definitely windows up here in the tower.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we should fly down under cover here, and peer into a window, and I can sort of bring the sound to us if they're talking in there, or if there's no one in there, we should be able to know pretty quickly.
Sounds good.
Hover, pull the noise. You can probably hear Luthien down below, quietly moving. But you'll definitely hear movement in this room, and you maybe hear some crackling and some crunching, like somebody chewing on something. And there are definitely two people in there. And when they talk talk in a language that hurts your ears. Two very identical voices. You can just barely tell that they're two different people talking, and they seem to be up in there, muttering in their infernal tongue.
I wonder if we see any, is there a bell or some way of getting in touch with them? How would do we see any way that the Padan might summon them, or because I can make his voice, right? I guess I don't know him, so
yeah, you don't know him to do that.
I haven't heard his voice. I could make a sound of like a distant sound of I don't want to put Lithian in a spot. I was going to, or excuse me, Cytherea in a spot. I could make a sound of like a struggle in the Padan's chamber where he's meeting. Oh,
and he's down all the way down below on the ground floor, though, meeting with Cytherea.
Did I hear the Seneschal's voice?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe I'll have the sound of the Seneschal's voice calling, please, the Padan would like to see you. Please, come right away.
I think you will do that. And I think you will hear those voices still, and they say, he is not supposed to be up here. He is disobeyed. And the other voice says, well, then we will eat him. Let us go. And you hear the sound of them standing, they're setting some things down and moving to head down the stairs. Cytherea, we cut back to you. Padan says, well, this has been a productive meeting.
I'd like to say to the Padan, I think I've given you the wrong impression, perhaps, with your speaking of hiring my people at your beck and call. What we're really asking for is for an agreement of peace between our people and your people, just for this one winter. Our people, if we were to pass through your lands, I've passed through there on the way here, and I've seen there's plenty of land that we can graze our cattle on, and it's not going to degrade the land if they're just passing through for one season.
I understand. Then in that case, absolutely no. No, I don't think so. I don't think we want uncouth, unwashed barbarians walking through our lands like this. See, he's trying to bait you at this point.
I say, well, would you be willing to put this proposition to the people of the city and the surrounding lands? That's what I would really need some help with. Is
you want me to consult with the populace?
Well, they're the people whose lands we're going to be passing through.
They're the people who occupy the land we're going to be passing through, but we are the people who own and control the lands.
But you live in the city. You don't live in the countryside. I don't understand.
Are you being deliberately obtuse?
Not deliberately. I understand that our ways are different to the ways of the city. But surely this land that you're on is the land that you own.
You obviously have a very different conception of how power works where you come from. And it seems to me that we're at odds in this discussion, don't you?
I don't see any reason why we need to be.
I think this conversation is done.
All right, I stand up and I say, well, Padan Despat, I thank you for giving me a small lesson in how power functions in the City of Ashes.
That actually seems to amuse him and please him. Lithian, I want to kind of transition so I can tie some things together. You will see two beautiful 6 feet tall, kind of peeking out the door as these people come down the stairs, down the tower. Beautiful man, beautiful woman, very identical, that sort of weirdly kind of maybe not kind of natural features, dressed loosely. They walk side by side down these steps, and they are heading down. You heard the mimicked voice of the seneschal, and they go past you and go on down.
I had an idea, and tell me what
Sure.
you think about this. I took another gift called Mark the Maker.
Sure.
With a careful inspection, you understand the purpose and operation of any crafted object. You also gain a brief vision of each person who substantially helped in its creation and a short description of what they contributed to it. I'm wondering if there's something in here that was created by whoever used to work in here that I can use to try and understand who that was.
Sure. I think you can run your hands over some of the instrumentation and things here, and I think you will get the vision you will have of this sorcerer and Pedant Despot there, and you'll see the sorcerer drawing out some kind of summoning circle using these instruments.
Okay.
And I think that the last thing you see get done is as he stands back as the sorcerer does something, and you know that it goes wrong.
Can I grab one of the soul gems?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Soul gems with me.
Yeah.
And slip upstairs.
Okay.
Try and rejoin my compatriots.
So I want to connect up where Cythery is in this, and then I want to bring the three of you together. Cythery, you rise. Pedant Despot rises, kind of gestures, and they go to head out, and you will see these two beautiful people come in, 6 feet tall exactly, dressed in loose gossamer clothing, identical, one male, one female, and they look at Pedant Despot, and they say, "Pedant, you sent for us?" And he says, "No, I didn't." And they say, "The seneschal said that you did." His eyes, you see his brow furrow. We'll come back to that moment in just a second. Anax, Vascos, you've drawn these two away. Let's assume that the three of you can kind of meet up in this big palatial chamber that's up here. It is, a beautiful silk beds, lovely tables and desks and things like that. Bags filled with gold, wealth, and so on. Various contracts laid out, and you'll see, particularly Lithian, like little shards of some of the soul gems kind of broken up and scattered around like crumbs.
Well, I see Lithian like look at the soul gem dust and ask, what surprises you about this dust?
It's clear that downstairs a sorcerer, formerly perhaps in the employ of the Pedant, was using sorcery to conjure beasts of some sort. There were a number of these soul gems, and I show them the one that I have. To see that one is in dust can only mean that they were being used to feed whoever was in this room, or that's my assumption. Who were those two jokers who left?
They said they would eat the seneschal.
Well, that's disgusting.
They seem to be... They speak in some language that harms my ears, but otherwise they seem to be human like us. But to say that they would eat another servant of the Padan, something strange about them.
I don't think they're human.
Anax, what is your take on this? Are you looking around for things? What are you doing?
Alex is trying to get a sense of the room. Is this a bed chamber? Is this sort of a, you know?
It is clearly the Padan's great chamber, used both as a bed chamber and a study, and now clearly a depository for ill-gotten gains.
Okay.
Gems and contracts and gold and all of that kind of thing here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think she's just sort of, poking around, opening drawers, not really. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things you'll see kind of as you're looking around is definitely there are some orders here that kind of tie into the things you've heard about the military going out into the countryside. That clearly the Padan's involved with that. Like there's copies of messages and reports and things that indicate that they're going out to some place near the mountains for something.
Okay. What do the beds look like?
Grand silken beds. They have the whiff of brimstone and sulfur to them at this point.
Okay. Yeah.
The Padan turns back to you, Cetheri, and says, "Do you know anything about this? Why my seneschal should be sending an unusual missive?"
Before I answer him, I just want to ask, these mysterious people, they're speaking to the Padan in like the language of the city, but when they speak, it hurts my ears?
No, because they're not speaking the demonic language at this point.
Right, so I don't really know anything that these people are unusual, except that they're twins and they're very beautiful.
Yes, you definitely get a bad vibe from them. I think you're skilled enough to the sheer amount of bad here is getting under your skin.
Okay, and what was the Padan's question?
Do you know anything about this, Ambassador Cetheri?
I say I don't. And who are these two? I don't know if I've been introduced to these particular members of the city aristocracy.
Their names are unimportant. They are my assistants.
And with what do they assist you?
And one of them says, whatever he wants.
And does the Padan seem to believe that I don't know anything about the seneschal?
He is deeply suspicious, but he's more concerned about what's gone on in the tower. And he says, I will take my leave of you now. I will have my guards see to you.
Very well. I'll start rolling up my scroll, my hide, and maybe just take as long as I can at getting ready to leave.
He moves out of the room with these twins. You hear him shout for the guards in the corridor to come, and clearly gives them some whispered orders, and about a half dozen of them come into the room as the Padan heads up the stairs to where the others are, along with his two infernal servants, and that is where we're going to take up next time. Sound okay? We're about a quarter. Usually what I do is stars and wishes, and I do that after we'll do on the second session, and as we need to, because it's just the first session. Between now and next time, if you have any questions about the mechanics, go ahead and send them on. Or if you're like, I don't like this word, or I don't like this gift that I chose, feel free. We can swap those around between now and next time. Does that seem cool?
Yep.
Okay. Well, then I am going to stop the recording.